Shalom, WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. This week, we will be reading Parshat Vayishlach in the synagogue. In it, we find Jacob returning home after a long absence, right? He fled the promised land, the home of his father Yitzhak and his mother Rivka, Isaac and Rebekah. And he left there in a haste 21 years prior, running from his brother who he has wronged. His mother Rivka tells him that Esau is going to kill him or wants to kill him. He had just tricked his father out of getting his blessing. He hasn't faced his father. And his mother said, run to my family's place. And he did 21 years ago. And now I want to look at a couple of the verses as Jacob returns home to see what we can learn from them, in particular during this holiday season. Next week is Thanksgiving, and I thought we might gain some insight here about our own maybe returning home. Maybe it's been a couple years since you've been face-to-face with some of your family, and are there dynamics we can learn from here about how to reconnect, reapproach, how to handle these reunions. And even if we've been with our family all along, there's some good lessons here. So at the very beginning of the Parsha, chapter 32 of Genesis, verse 5, Jacob sends messengers to Esau and says, Im Lavan garti ve'achar ad ata. I lived in Lavan's place from way back when until now. That's where I've been the last 20 years. I've been at Lavan. The rabbis, Rashi in particular, tells us that this phrasing is picked very particularly. That he says, Im Lavan garti, I have sojourned or lived with Lavan, because garti, its numerical representation in gematria, right? Every Hebrew letter also has a numerical meaning. Garti is 613. The resh in the middle is 600. The gimel at the beginning is 3. The yud at the end is 10. 613, the number of mitzvot. And that this is a way, says the Midrash, says Rashi, for Jacob to sort of send a note to Esau, like, I've been away, but I'm still kosher. I've still been practicing God's ways. I've been doing all 613 mitzvot, even though I've been gone. We don't have to think about the anachronism of that. There are not 613 mitzvot as we think of them now, but fine. I've been a complete Jew, even though I've been away. Ad achar ad ata, ve'achar ad ata, ve'echar ad ata, from way back then until now, meaning one midrash says, even beyond the letter of the law, right? From every aspect of the law, I've been observing it. So Jacob shows up. He's like, I'm good. I've been good, and you should know that. And we could try and figure out what that means to Esau, who's been rejected or feels rejected by God, feels rejected by his mother, if not his father, feels wronged in the name of God by Jacob at the very least. Why Jacob is throwing that, but this is how Jacob chooses to approach Esau, right? With these airs of I'm good, I'm perfect, everything's fine. Look, that's one way we can reunite with our family. Maybe that's what happens. He hasn't seen him yet. These are messengers being sent from afar. So maybe that's like, you don't come in being maybe the most earnest, being the most connected. But eventually, when he has to actually come face to face, Jacob realizes that there's more to it. And we read the verse when they come face to face, just 3 verses later, Vayira Yaakov me'od vayitzer lo. Yaakov became very frightened, and it distressed him. What a great translation, right? He became frightened, and it distressed him. What distressed him? His fright. But why was he frightened? He's frightened, says one midrash that we read in Talmud Brachot 4a, that Jacob was afraid he had committed a sin. Now, we know he just sent a note to his brother that said, I've done all the mitzvot over this time. So what sin is he afraid he may have committed? Particularly in comparison to his brother. So we learn in Brachot that he's afraid, or at least the commentary of the Targum Targum Yonatan on the Talmud, that he was afraid that he had been remiss in completing the mitzvah of kibud av ve'em. Right, that he had not done a good job while he was away of honoring his father and his mother. A central mitzvah, one of the Aseret Dibrot, right, one of the 10 Commandments, and he was away. How could he do it? But of course, Esau has been there all along. Esau, in this case, looks like the good son, the one who is there and solicitous to his parents, and even after all he'd been through, Yaakov, suddenly faced with his brother, comes flooding back on him all the family dynamics that he left behind. We know that Isaac preferred Esau, Rebecca preferred Jacob, because the text tells us. And suddenly he's coming back. And even though he's satisfied with who he's been, right? I've done all the mitzvot. I'm good here. He still feels that he's got something deficient, right? Standing next to his brother, he feels badly about himself. These are family dynamics that we all cope with, right? Jacob is not unique. When we come together as a family, it's a blessing, it's wonderful, but it also comes with a lot of what we would call, in modern parlance, baggage, right? And the more we recognize that going into it, right? Jacob was afraid, and it disturbed him that he was afraid. Like that, we might be a little disturbed and unsettled, but that's okay. In fact, maybe that's good. Maybe that is part of the blessing of reuniting with our families, because ultimately the brothers come together, they make their peace, and they move forward together in a much closer relationship. And the next thing we read about them is that Esau and Jacob come together to bury Isaac when he finally dies, doing the honor to their father that children are supposed to do. And so all of this seems to come together in a happy ending, but it's because they got together, because they explored those dynamics together. And so as we come together with family, God willing, you're going to see family on Thanksgiving, maybe Hanukkah, which starts on the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend, to recognize that family's complicated. And that's okay, that it is those emotions, it is that, give and take of family dynamics that makes us stronger, that makes us healthier, that ultimately coming together for these kinds of reunions, hopefully not after 21 years, like Jacob and Esau, gives us the opportunity to understand ourselves a little better, to make sure we are doing right in our relationships, whether that's with kibud av ve'em, honoring our fathers and our mothers, or how we are treating our siblings, or how well we're staying in touch with our cousins, all these kinds of things. It's good. It's good to come together. It's good to review, and it's okay to be a little afraid, and it's okay to be a little nervous. We want to have the integrity to be able to say, im lavan garti, right? I've been being the best I can, but also have the humility to recognize even the best we can does not mean we've been everything we could be or should be for those we love, for those with whom we are closest, our family, and our close friends. I hope everyone has a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving. I hope you see your family. I hope in seeing your family, it's even with whatever nerves, whatever might be out there, it's rewarding. You're able to put those two verses together, right? To feel that integrity in our lives, im lavan garti, as well as recognize that we can always do differently and do better in relationships, and come out on the other end of the holiday feeling whole, or even more whole than we do going into it. And everyone should have lots to give thanks for, lots of healthy and happy family and blessings, and enjoy your Thanksgiving. Happy holiday.